Hi, today's lesson is about the continuity and change over time thesis and the introduction paragraph. Our focus today is developing a successful thesis and a roadmap statement, and incorporating those into an analytical introduction paragraph. Okay, first thing we need to do is break down the prompt. What is the task word? Analyze. What are you analyzing? Continuities and changes. Continuities and changes in what? Political developments. Where? Well, you choose one of the three: Central Asia, East Asia, or the Middle East. What does the question ask? So you have to determine what the focus is here. Obviously, that's the political developments. Okay, so you could write about forms of government, political rulers, imperial expansion, conflict within political states, or conflict among political states. Any of these topics are acceptable under political developments in the change and continuity over time essay. Okay, so here's our prompt. Analyze the continuities and changes in the development of political states in one of the following regions, circa 600 to 1450. Obviously, you're going to start with your introduction. And the first thing that you need is background information. This could be one sentence, maybe two. You don't need a lot, just put it all together and give your reader a setting, right? Your background information, time, place, situation, whatever is necessary. Restate the question or the prompt. And it's very, very important that you use the time given to you. That needs to be in your introduction paragraph verbatim the way it is in the prompt. Okay, in our particular example for this prompt is 600 to 1450. So it's very important. This is the frame of reference from which you should develop your argument. So it definitely needs to be in your introduction paragraph. Next, the thesis. This is your answer. You should have one continuity and at least one change. You really need to do that in two sentences. Obviously, 3 answers is definitely better. However, you definitely need to make sure that you have at least one continuity and at least one change. Because if you have 2 changes and no continuity, you do not get the point for the thesis. If you have 2 changes or 2 continuities and no change, you still do not get the point for the thesis. But if you have at least one continuity and at least one change, then you do get the thesis point. The next thing that's important is your roadmap. The roadmap should be written after the thesis. It finishes the introduction paragraph. And this is where you could address all parts of the question. And you should do this in at least 2 sentences. And the easiest way to do this is to use the thesis to develop that roadmap. So whatever your answer is for your continuity, 1 sentence to address that part of the question. And whatever your answer is for your change, write 1 sentence to address that change. That way, you have a change, you have a continuity, that's your thesis, you have a roadmap, you address your change, you address the continuity. You've received 2 points in the first paragraph. Remember, guys, just like in the DBQ, I explained that you have your thesis in the introduction paragraph and an additional document, whatever that document may be and why. I tell you to put that in the paragraph. That's 2 points right there. This is the same concept that applies for the CCOT essay. Your thesis and your roadmap statement. And the roadmap statement, and it should cover your continuity and your change, will address all parts of the question. And there are 2 points. Okay, so here's our first example. The first one was Central Asia. Analyze the continuities and changes in the development of political states in Central Asia. circa 600 to 1450 CE. Okay, so here's your thesis. Continuity for Central Asian political developments. Pastoral groups continually held political control. Your change, Mongols were able to unify under one ruler, Genghis Khan. And I chose this particular change because it is linked to the pastoral groups, because the Mongols themselves are an example of a pastoral group. So there is a link between the continuity and the change. The next statement in your paragraph is your roadmap statement. There is a link between this continuity and this change, just like there is a link between the continuity and the change in the roadmap, just like in the thesis. Okay, so your roadmap statement that's written after your thesis should address both your continuity and your change. Nomadic people controlled much of Central Asia. Right? Those pastoral groups, they are nomadic people. And notice that I used the particular location for this example. The change. Mongols invaded urban areas and exercised political control through military skills. So I used the example of the change to write my roadmap. Right? They invaded urban areas, and that's how they began their conquest to take control, and they exercised that political control. Notice I put political because we always need to be specific. It's better to specify than to be vague, through military skills. And by putting how they were able to exercise political control, that opens up the door for lots of pieces of evidence, because there's a lot that you could write about the military skills of the Mongols. So here is a great example for this particular prompt in choosing this particular location, Central Asia, with a thesis that addresses a continuity and a change, that answers it, and then a roadmap that addresses the continuity and the change. Obviously, these are not in complete sentences, so when you make your notes, when you see your prompt on your prompt sheet, and you begin your T-chart, this is what your T-chart should look like, or a little table. List your continuity and your changes. Do the thesis first. Get your answer first. Then write your roadmap statement and link them together. Let's look at the next example. Analyze the continuities and changes in the development of political states in East Asia, circa 600 to 1450. Okay, the continuity for East Asia. They emphasized bureaucratic forms of government. A change. The level of centralization varied. And notice I specifically picked China. That's the easiest example for East Asia. And of course, as you're going through and you've got 3 to choose from, pick the one that you're the most comfortable with. But I narrowed this down to specifically talk about China. And you could do that because as long as whatever you're specifically talking about fits within that region, it's fine. Okay, so we have emphasized bureaucratic government and the level of centralization varied. Now, please understand that it's possible to always or continually have a bureaucratic form of government, but through transitions between dynasties and periods of chaos, not necessarily losing their form of government, but through periods of chaos, the level of centralization and that central authority varied. Sometimes they were a strong unified state, sometimes they were not. And that's where the roadmap then comes in to help address the continuity and the change. Emperors continually used bureaucracy to rule. So we were specific with who used this form of government and what it was used for. Emperors continually used bureaucracy to rule. And whenever you're writing about your continuity, it's good to use words like continually or always. That shows something that was never ending, or at least it continued for a lengthy period of time. And the change for the roadmap, China returned to a strong unified state. This was especially true after Mongol rule. But there were periods of Chinese dynasties during this time period where there was a strong or a unified, a high level of centralization. But there were also periods where that level of centralization was very low, even though they still had a bureaucratic form of government. And so this is a great example for this CCOT and East Asia. Analyze the continuities and changes in the development of political states in the Middle East, circa 600 to 1450. So obviously this is not example 1. You can see I just copied the slides and didn't change that. I just changed the examples. I just now realized that. But this is example 3. Okay, so we have our continuity and our change for the Middle East political developments. Politics continually focused on Islam. You have to be careful here to not write about the religion. If you write about the religion and how it's part of politics, that's okay. And then you're skirting a fine line, because you don't need to go into great details about the religion itself. But how the religion is related to politics and rule and law and controlling people, that's different. Change. Well, several empires ruled the Muslim world. Despite in the Middle East, politics always or continually focusing on Islam, there were several empires that ruled the Muslim world. Now, following the thesis is the roadmap statement. They remained a majority Islamic or Muslims. Right? Notice the connection. Just like we have a connection here, there's a connection here. And the roadmap statement for the change. The center of Islam, the center of the Islamic State moved with the development of new empires. So there is a connection here as well. So that's why it's easier to use the thesis to develop that roadmap statement. Because here you are able, by doing that, here you're able to show the connection, not just with your answers and your thesis, but how you address your answers, how you address all the parts of the question. All right, and lastly, this is your prompt. Analyze the continuities and changes in the the development of political states in one of the following regions from circa 600 to 1450 CE. What your assignment is to write an introduction paragraph for the following prompt. So choose one of these 3: Central Asia, East Asia, or the Middle East. And you are to write a full introduction paragraph, not just a thesis, but a full introduction paragraph. And that is your assignment. Remember, it's important. Oops, there we go. Nope. This is what I want. Remember, these are the following things that you need in your introduction paragraph. The background information, restate the prompt, and remember, it's important to use the exact time given, your thesis, and then your roadmap statement. And the examples that I gave you are not in complete sentences. Obviously, you're writing a thesis or an introduction paragraph. You need to write in complete sentences. So that is, the assignment. An introduction paragraph for this particular